Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military with Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 14th of March of 2026. Today we have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the Middle East, and now we understand what is going to be the heart of the Epic Fury operation, and it seems that the island of Hark is going to be the heart of the Epic Fury operation, because it seems that this is exactly the island that the United States of America is planning to take on the complete control in coming days. Maybe not coming days, but more precisely in coming weeks, because Marines have just departed from the area of Japan, and obviously it will take maybe a week or 2 weeks before they answer this territory and before the states prepare this area for the landing operation. And most likely the island of Hark, the heart of the Epic Fury operation, is going to be not the only island that the states are going to take under complete control. Most likely, first of all, the Americans will try to take under complete control every single island to the south of Iran in the area of the Persian Gulf, and this is going to be either the first step of this operation or even probably the final one. As for the previous 24 hours, the United States of America, more precisely the coalition, carried out lots of attacks on these islands, trying to reduce till ruins the military infrastructure of Iran. This video was published by the official US sources, and here we can see how exactly the coalitions were attacking positions of Iranians on the territory of this island. And the most important thing of this video is that the coalitions haven't attacked objects of energy infrastructure. We're talking about port infrastructure, we're talking about refineries, we're talking about reservoirs and so on. All these things weren't attacked by the coalitions, which means that first of all the Americans are trying to save this infrastructure, either for the negotiation process, they can use these assets to force the Iranians to accept the reality, or they can use these assets for their own purposes. Another important thing that I would like to point to attention, that the island of Hark, the heart of the Epic Fury operation, is the most important island for Iran, because up to 90% of its export goes exactly through this island. So I'm trying to tell you this because the United States of America could attack this island yesterday, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, at the beginning of the Epic Fury operation, but for some reason the United States of America decided to attack this island between the 30th and the 40th of March of 2026. And the answer to this question is very simple. To discuss, to understand the reason why the states attacked this island just during the previous night is the prices for oil as usually. So these are the prices for oil at the end of the 30th of March of 2026, at the end of Friday. I would like to remind you that WTI, the price of WTI was $98 and the cost of Brent was $103. And I would like to point your attention that markets are not, the oil markets especially, don't work through weekdays. So during Saturday and Sunday we won't see any trades, and the most important, we won't see any changes in oil prices. And this is the only reason why the United States of America attacked this island that supply 90% of the Iran exports exactly in this area, in this day, because during the night, because the United States of America understand that if they attack the island, obviously all these attacks will do only one thing: they will push prices higher. So that is why they attacked between the Friday and Saturday during the night, with the purpose to see no changes during the oil prices. But I would like to point to attention that most likely the upcoming Monday is going to be probably the worst Monday since the beginning of this century. I believe that the upcoming Monday is going to be the Black Monday, because the United States of America attacked this island, and we believe that the prices for oil will increase, will rise significantly within the next 48 hours when oil markets open. So the United States of America is transferring units in this area, and as we discussed just a minute ago, it will take time. And during this period of time, the Iranians will continue attacking the ships and vessels in the Strait of Hormuz and in the area of the Persian Gulf. By the way, this is another video that was published from the Kish Island, another island that most likely the United States of America is planning to take under complete control as a result of a ground operation. Here we can see the consequences of bombardments. The United States of America reduced the infrastructure of this island as well to ruins, so they're preparing this island for the ground operation that which most likely will start within 2 or 3 weeks or something like this, because obviously this is exactly the time that the United States of America needs to redeploy their forces from Japan in the direction of the Arabian Sea. I would like to remind you that according to media, 2,200 Marines with the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, accompanied by different ships, have been ordered to deploy to the Middle East amid the ongoing conflict with Iran. And most likely these 2,200 soldiers will be tasked to take under complete control islands in the Persian Gulf. And the next batch of US forces, about 5,000 additional US Marines and sailors, most likely will be deployed, probably with the purpose to improve the US positions on the Iranian side of the Persian Gulf. So this is exactly how I see the situation. But we see that the Iranians still have lots of time, and obviously during these days they will continue attacking vessels and tankers through the Persian Gulf. And today several sources published, for example, this video where we can see the situation in the area of the Strait of Hormuz. As we can see here, we have lots of tankers, lots of vessels that were damaged or even destroyed as a result of the Iranian attacks. And it seems, and I believe that in coming days somebody will also mine these let's say tankers, former tankers, with the purpose to improve the security of this area, if this situation can be called as a security situation. So a lot of tankers, as you can see, were damaged and destroyed. And furthermore, we have a very interesting article published by different sources. According to information we have, since the beginning of this situation, up to 18 ships and vessels were damaged or even destroyed by the Iranians. And here we can see the map where we can see the approximate places where these tankers were damaged and destroyed. During the previous 24 hours, according to different sources, several more tankers were damaged and destroyed. And for example, the author of this video claims that here we can see a tanker related to the US assets that was damaged during its attempt to cross the Strait of Hormuz. Another important thing is that the United States of America understand that most likely they will not be able to unblock the Strait of Hormuz without losses. Obviously, there will be losses. So, and we understand that, of course, the President of the United States of America will try to make the situation with minimal losses. So that is why today the President of the United States of America asked different countries of the world to join his coalition with the purpose to unblock the Strait of Hormuz. And the most important is that the President of the United States of America asked the President of China, Xi Jinping, and China itself to join this coalition. So this is a very interesting request, very interesting demand, because I would like to remind you that these months we received a very interesting report that the Americans are planning to sign a very interesting agreement with Taiwan, a 14 billion arms package for Taiwan, mainly including PAC-3 and Assam's air defense missiles. And it is very interesting and strange to see that the President of the United States of America asked the President of China to join the coalition with the purpose to unblock the Strait of Hormuz. Maybe this is exactly the plan. Maybe he's trying to understand whether the China is going to not support, but is going to be on the same side with the United States of America or not. And if, for example, Chinese reject the idea and the plan of the President of the United States of America to jointly unblock the Strait of Hormuz, maybe this is going to be the reason for the President of States to unblock the 40 billion deal with Taiwan. Who knows what is going to happen? Furthermore, during the previous 24 hours, we continued receiving different updates, satellite pictures from the territory of the Middle East, where we can see the consequences of missile attacks between the Iranians and the coalitions. And today we also received the report that mainly from the pro-Iranian sources that the Iranians attacked the air base of Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, and the sources are saying, mainly pro-Iranian sources are saying, that several aircrafts were damaged. The President of the United States of America denied this information. He's saying that fake news spread this information and there is nothing common with the reality. Anyway, the situation is very difficult, and obviously now everybody is waiting for Monday. At least I'm waiting for Monday, because one thing is clear, at least to me, that the oil prices on Monday will break any records due to the US airstrike in the area of the Hark Island. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next. Now let's move to Ukraine. During the previous 24 hours, we also received lots of very interesting updates. And the most important update is that the Russians attacked the theater of Ukraine during the previous night using hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles. And the Russians during the previous night's attack were mainly attacking the objects of energy infrastructure in Ukraine, in the area of the city of Kiev and basically in the Kiev region. So we have this map where we can see the approximate roads of Russian attack, and the most important area is the territory between the city of Kiev and the territory of Moldova. So as you can see, many lines were moving in this area. As for the lines that were moving in the direction of the city of Kiev, we have lots of icons with explosion, but when talking about the lines of the caliber missiles that were moving in the direction of Moldova, we see that they just disappeared without dealing any damage to the Ukrainian energy infrastructure. So the Russians, according to this picture, once again were trying to destroy this energy line between the Kievska substation that is located to the west of the city of Kiev. We're talking about this substation that the Russians have tried to have attacked and have tried to attack since the beginning of the special military operation, probably more than 100 times. And the Russians were trying to attack the Vinnytsia substation, which is located in the southern parts of Ukraine, in the southwestern parts of Ukraine, in the vicinity of the settlement of Vinnytsia. So the Russians were trying to cut this energy line, probably for the 10th time since the beginning of the special military operation. They used for these purposes, as we can see, lots of drones and missiles. But when talking about reports that we received for Ukraine about power outages, about problems with heat, with electricity supply and so on, we can make a conclusion that most likely the Russians managed to deal damage to this energy line, but the Russians haven't managed to cut this energy line from the entire energy infrastructure, which means that Ukrainians managed to save their positions in this area. From the other side, we received a few more articles and updates about the situation in the area of the city of Brovary. We have lots of pictures and fire anomalies in this area that were recorded by different Western satellites, websites and so on. So the Russians were attacking this territory, the Russians attacked this industrial zone in the area of the city of Brovary, and the Russians attacked the railway station. We have videos, we have pictures. Most likely the Russians managed to discover some industrial zone that Ukrainians were using for the military purposes, and the Russians attacked this territory with the purpose to destroy this industrial zone completely. And of course the Russians, right now the Russians are focused just on the one thing. The Russians are trying to find places, plants, factories that the Ukrainians are using to produce missiles, because since the beginning of this year the Ukrainians have made lots of troubles and problems for the Russian Federation using drones and missiles while attacking deep inside of the territory of Russia. And the previous day wasn't the exception. For example, right after the Russians finished their massive attack, the Ukrainians launched their own attack deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation. And the Ukrainians were attacking mainly in the southern direction, trying to use as many as possible drones. Later, the Ukrainians turned their attention in the direction of the city of Moscow, and this picture was published by different sources during the day from Ukrainian side, where here we can see dozens of drones that were launched in the direction of the city of Moscow. And the Ukrainians, of course, first of all, were trying to overload the Russian air defense forces. The pro-Ukrainian sources that during this attack that's been taking place during the day, the Ukrainians used more than 180 drones, yet we haven't received almost anything from the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. The only thing that the Russians stated that between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. they managed to bring down 37 drones, but obviously obviously the Ukrainians launched more. Furthermore, we see that's another front line that is escalating right now, and this is exactly that what we were talking about during the previous videos and several days ago. If you remember, I told you that the problem in the Middle East, many people think that the problems in the Middle East will create the golden or the brilliant age for the Russian Federation. Probably these people are correct when they think like this, but obviously this might happen, but only in case if the Russians are able to secure and to protect their investitions. And I would like to remind you that I suppose and I suggested that most likely in coming days, the enemies of the Russian Federation would try to intensify their activities in the international waters, trying to attack and to arrest as many as possible Russian vessels with the purpose, with this step, with this movement, to force the Russians, to force the Iranians to accept the US demands and to accept the capitulation and to accept that the Iranians have lost the war with the Americans, with the United States of America. And I would like to remind you that today the Iranians stated that they're not going to accept the loss of the battle with the United States of America, and even if the United States of America announces the victory, they will continue bombing and attacking objects of and assets of the United States of America in this region. So this situation is that during the previous days and during the previous hours, few more tankers and vessels and ships that belong to the shadow fleet of the Russian Federation were attacked by the Ukrainians. The sources are saying, and we're not talking not just about sources or something like this, we're talking about the Ukraine's official sources. They stated that during the previous 24 hours, they attacked several vessels in the area of the city of Kerch, so right exactly in the area of the Crimean Bridge. Ukraine's main intelligence directorate claims to have attacked 2 Russian vessels with drones in the Kerch Strait. The first is allegedly the ferry Slavianin, and the second also the ferry Avangard. So here we can see just pictures, but probably the Ukraine's main intelligence directorate will publish videos where we will see how exactly they were attacking these vessels in the area of the Black Sea and the Kerch Strait. Another important thing is that several days ago we received a report that Sweden, also Swedish forces, established complete control, more precisely says the tanker Sea Owl in the Baltic Sea. The vessels was en route from Brazil to the port of Primorsk in the Leningrad region. The tanker was sailing under the Comoros flag, and the Swedish suspect its captain, a Russian citizen, of document forgery. So, and this is not the first case in this year when the European countries arrest the Russian vessels. I would like to remind you that since the beginning of this year, lots of vessels in the Northern Sea and the Baltic Sea were arrested by the European countries. For example, several days ago, on the 7th of March, Sweden detained the bulk carrier Kaffa, which was en route to St. Petersburg under the Ukrainian flag. So it took place several days ago, and so this is the second, let's say, vessel that was arrested by the Swedish military authorities. During the same period of time, at least several tankers and vessels were captured by Belgium. For example, in this video we can see how the Belgian Navy, according to incoming reports with the assistance of the French Navy, says the Guinean flagged oil tanker Athera in the Eastern English Channel between the 28th of February and the 1st of March. So a lot of vessels were captured in this area since the beginning of this year, more precisely even since the beginning of the Epic Fury operation that started in the Middle East. So with these actions, the Western countries are trying to press the Russians and not allow the Russians to think that the golden age has begun. Of course, the Russians, to secure the situation with these attacks, decided to use additional crew members on the vessels, former Wagner forces and former intelligence forces of the Russian Federation, with the purpose to resist to the European authorities and so on. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next, but obviously the situation with the Russian vessels is in crisis. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the Zaporizhia region. During the previous night, during the previous 24 hours, the map has been adjusted. And these are the changes on the ground. This is the end of the 30th of March, and this is the end of the 14th of March. According to information we have, according to this video that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, the Russians are keeping advancing in the direction of the settlement by the name of Gulai Polska. So these are the changes. The Russians have already begun bombing and attacking the settlement of Gulai Polska with heavy flamethrower systems by the name of TOS, and which means that the Russians are very close to the settlement, and most likely the ground operation is imminent and will take place very, very soon. And this is a very important village on the road towards the city of Orekhov, because if Russians capture the settlement of Gulai Polska, then the distance between possible edge positions of Russians and the settlement, or more precisely the Orekhov agglomeration, would be less than 20 kilometers. So basically just 16 kilometers and 920 meters. And currently this is the task of the group of forces east in this direction, to capture the settlement of Orekhov, which can lead to complete collapse of the entire Zaporizhia defense of the armed forces of Ukraine. At the same time, the Ukrainians continue accumulating their forces to the south of the river of Volcha with the purpose to probably carry out additional wave of a counter-offensive operation in this area, but the Russians control the situation. For example, in this video we can see vehicles of the armed forces of Ukraine that were moving in the southern direction, probably with the purpose to reinforce the Ukrainian counter-offensive operation, but as you can see, all these vehicles were attacked and destroyed with Lancet drones. And you know that this is a very interesting situation and detail that I've noted. When the Russians were allowed to use the Starlink system, they stopped using Lancet systems, Lancet drones, and they intensified the usage of FPV drones and drones that can use the Starlink terminals for connections. But when the United States of America cut Starlink, when the Russians were cut from Starlink, the Russians returned back to this Lancet system, and they began using this system probably very much. Lots of episodes, lots of videos were published during the previous days of how the Russians were attacking positions and forces of the armed forces of Ukraine with this system. So which means that maybe this system has some immunity to the probably connections or to electronic warfare of the armed forces of Ukraine. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Dobropolye direction. During the previous 24 hours, the map has been adjusted in this area as well. The Russians improved their position significantly for the previous 48 hours in the northern parts of Grishna, and this is how the map has been adjusted for the previous 48 hours. Yesterday we saw this situation. The Russians improved their position significantly in the central part of the settlement, and today we received another video published by pro-Ukrainian sources where we can see two Russian soldiers on vehicles that were moving in the northern part of the settlement under very heavy fire from the Ukrainian FPV drone operators. So this video confirms that the Russians most likely have more or less reliable control over the northern part of the settlement, and we believe that in coming days the Minister of Defense of Russia will confirm complete control over the territory. So the Russians were recorded in the northern parts of the city, which means that most likely the city of Grishna has fallen. Furthermore, the Russians intensified their activities in the area of the city of Konstantinovka. During the previous 24 hours, lots of videos were published of how Russians were reducing to ruins the western parts of the city, both with artillery with multiple launch rocket system and just regular artilleries. Here we can see how the Russians were reducing to ruins the western part, and it's not just an artillery attack. This is something like an artillery preparation, which means that most likely right after this attack, the Russians began another wave of offensive operation with the purpose to improve their positions around the Konstantinovka citadel. As of the end of the 14th of March of 2026, we don't know for sure whether the Russians managed to achieve any results in this area, but we believe that in coming days we will receive additional updates on this matter. Furthermore, the Russians continued bombing and attacking the northern parts of the city with the purpose not to allow the Ukrainians to evacuate soldiers from the southern part or to replace them with fresh forces from the northern part. As for the Slaviansk direction, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything special. Probably one thing is very important. Today, the sources reported that the Ukrainians began building protection nets through the siege of Slaviansk, which means that the Ukrainian authorities understand that most likely in coming days, the Russians will be able to start using FPV drones over the city with the purpose to attack positions, warehouses, and temporary deployment points. So that is why the Ukrainians are trying to improve logistics right now before the beginning of the battle for the siege of Slaviansk, which most likely is imminent. As for the northern directions, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything special, probably just one video published from the northern parts of the Sumy region. Here we can see how the Russians, as a result of reconnaissance operation, managed to discover positions of the armored forces of Ukraine, more precisely a launching site of the armored forces of Ukraine. And when the Russians discovered these drones and this warehouse, they began attacking this territory with their own drones. The Russians are saying that the Ukrainians lost lots of drones that the Ukrainians were planning to use to attack deep inside of the territory of Russia. And I would like to remind you that also during the day, we discussed a minute ago, the Ukrainians exactly from this area launched a massive attack in the direction of the city of Moscow, and maybe the Ukrainians were planning to use more drones to attack the city of Moscow, but several warehouses were discovered by Russians in advance and destroyed. And that's it for today. The Military Summary channel reminds to we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye-bye.